failing? And is it a time for a new approach? That is our topic for today. So for that, we have two very senior HR leaders, TA leaders amongst us. So let me first introduce to you one of them. I have Sandeep with me. So Sandeep is the director of talent acquisition at Zoominfo, and he has a decade of experience shaping across industries like Freshworks and AirAsia, and he's known to build world-class team across the globe. So lovely to have you, Sandeep, and welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of busy schedule and joining us. So
Thank you.
good afternoon to you. Okay, so now we have Vikas. Vikas is leading the talent acquisition at Orange Business. So with over like 7 years of experience, he has been instrumental in creating the C level and the niche technical recruitment, which Orange is known of, and he's an expert into aligning strategies with business growth. And as I was talking just before this chat started, so he's also expanding in India and overseas. So thank you, Vikas, for taking the time out and coming to join us. We are privileged to have you guys on board.
Thank you, Sajid.
Okay, so let's start off the discussion. So start off maybe with Sandeep. So Sandeep, tell us about your journey from childhood to becoming the leader which you are today, and any anecdotes, any events which you want to talk of.
Sure. I mean, that's an interesting question. So, I grew up in Bangalore. So this is the city where I kind of spent most part of my life. Started off during my childhood. As I go through my schooling, I've always been an introvert person. Cannot imagine being that today, but until my schooling and till my college or university days, I had been more of an introvert person. Did my engineering again from the same city, and post engineering, I took up my career in HR straight off the college. And once I started my career in the talent acquisition field, there was never looking back, right? So I was enjoying what I was doing, interacting with people, which I was generally not as much when I was an introvert early part of my life. But I think this profession also made me kind of get to meet more people, engage with people. Could be candidates, could be your hiring managers, or could be your peers in the industry. So I think that built on. And today I see myself so much transformed from being an introvert to an extrovert and being an outbound person, engaging with people, not shying off from or hesitating in engaging in conversations at different levels. So one of the key things or mantra for me was really about being persistent and being focused on what we do day in, day out. At times you get results faster, at times you get results slower. But being patient and persistent has been my key mantra for my journey so far. And hopefully that will take me further from here as well.
Great, and I think it was quite a journey you had from being the introvert and till now, right? So over to you, Vikas. About your journey from childhood to becoming the leader which you are today. Any funny stories or like any anecdotes? Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's a nice question. So I come from a very small town of Rajasthan, which is known as Alwar. It's a very beautiful town. I've been done all my education from this city, and after completing my bachelor's, I was looking out that what to do, and then I entered into the master's program. At that time, I was thinking to get into a job, but then I was simultaneously also been focusing on my education. So to do a higher education and to also focus that if after doing a higher education, what should I get it? So my focus was because I live very nearby to Delhi NCR. So I was targeting as that if I get a job into a metro city, and because coming out from a very small town and getting into a metro city, that was my target. And by that way, I think I dreaming in myself that if I'll get a job, where to start from, what job I should start in after completing my MBA, what should I get into it. So I was going at that time. There was a craze of call centers. Means most of the newspapers give the advertisements of the call center, but then I've thought of that call center should not be my focus area. Means I should be dream for something much more bigger than this. And at the same time, I was focusing, and I got to know that this HR which I'm doing right now in MBA, there should be some area where I can focus on. And at the same time, I was dreaming. I was going through the articles, various promotions of the jobs. I found one company where I thought that I can fit in. I gave the interview, and I was being selected out of the 35 candidates, and that's how my journey started after my masters. And I get into this job. It was a US staffing firm where I started my career, and from US consulting to this now Orange business. This was a very long journey. I've been completed almost 14 years in my recruitments, and I think now recruitments is in my veins, and so the blood is floating with the recruitment all across. I love doing a hands-on job, and I think that's what my bread and butter. But then I think I'm very good into making various strategies, various skills. What I have developed so far is on the recruitment, various techniques which I can give it to the business, and the focus is purely on to how to diversify myself, and as well as how to diversify this the term recruiting. So I think I am so called a recruiter, but then that's what I am.
Okay, great. So let's start off the next question. So my next question, we can start with you, Vikas. So do you think our interviews testing skills right now or social performance? Like normally, as we see that traditional interviews, they test candidates' actual abilities, like the hard skills. And right now, are we just judging like social performance, or are evaluating both, like real skills and not just personality? So, your thoughts on this, Vikas?
Have you heard about the social performance bias? I think the traditional interviews often unintentionally prioritize on social performance. Like they look into the confidence, the likabilities, and sometimes overshadowing the actual skills of the candidate.
Yeah.
Some people may excel in their interviews, means they have that communication style, their charisma in themselves that they deal into. So while the traditional interviews, they do not make out the necessity skills what we've been looking at, but then I think there is a biasness between that. But at the same time, it is also required, because traditional interviews, we cannot just say that we can choose another option, because traditional interviews sometimes give us the best results as well. But ensuring what we are evaluating are on real skill is something which we have to look out for.
Okay. So, Sandeep, your thoughts on this? Vikas wants to look out for real skills. What are your thoughts? Like, are interviews testing skills, or like they are just testing the social performance and personality?
I think our interview process today, we like it or not, often tests for candidates' social performance more than actual abilities itself, because in those 1 hour or 45 minutes of discussion, it's easy to get carried away with the communication skills or the presence or the social presentation skills of the individual or the candidate. They don't really reflect or need not necessarily reflect the actual skills itself. So at least in my journey, I've seen this evolve over the last couple of decades, is really about going away from asking hard skill based questions to having more situational based questions in the interview process. I think imbibing that in the interview process really helps us get to know how a candidate has reacted in a given situation and what is the thought process approach they would have taken. And having a structured interview process and more of competency based interview process, clearly looking at 2 or 3 different key competencies that is required to be successful in a given job, and
Mm.
trying to identify the candidate's potential in those areas as part of that situation based interviews has probably given us slightly better results for me in the organizations that I've been at, where we look at more holistic approach as compared to the gut feeling or the biases that we might have during the conversation, just pure by the communication skill of the individual as compared to the
Okay.
actual work one is capable of
Okay.
doing.
Okay. Uh, so this brings to my next question, which we can continue with Sandeep. On this, like charisma versus competency. How often do we get fooled? Like in your experience, have you like mistaken charisma for competency? And for others, like what do you think? Like what strategies we can ensure that we are hiring the most capable person, not the just the best presenter in the room?
Maybe I can go first. It's in continuation to what I just mentioned.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's so often happens. It's a human tendency. End of the day, recruiters are also humans, and interviewers are. So, uh, not all the time, people who are good at communicating or being charismatic in the conversation end up being great at their work. Like I can give examples. Like for example, when we look at hiring a product manager, for example, large portion of product management really about being able to influence the stakeholders, being able to influence all the peer group that they work with, both internal within the organization and outside. But they got to be presentable. They got to be bringing that aura, and they got to be ensuring that they get the job done. But in order to do that, they need to be equally knowledgeable in terms of driving that conversation, right? How do we measure that? And that's exactly where I say competency based interviewing largely helps in such situations to know how this person would have reacted to a certain competency from a behavioral per se, given that situation in the past, right? And more important is having follow up questions, like probing, right? Um, Generally, I have a good story to narrate, but
Mm.
when as a candidate I have a good story to narrate, but do I have in-depth knowledge of it is what I would be able to extract during that conversation by having more follow-up questions. Tell me a little bit more about it, right? Why did you feel it was challenging? What was your learning? Questions like these will actually make the candidates take a step back and think and give you a broader perspective, and that will also help in the interviewer, it could be the recruiter or the interviewer on the business, to have a lot more context to
Okay.
the individual.
Okay. Okay. Uh, any funny incident which you like, which you can narrate in your experience, where like you red-handed or like you caught someone with only personality, only the fluff and nothing material. Any example?
Yeah, I think we have entered thousands, so I'm sure they are. I would talk about, since we have more recruiters on the call, it's good to take example of hiring talent acquisition team members, right? So whenever I go out
Okay.
hiring, we see a lot of stuff on the resume, right, from saying Google search to whatnot, in terms of the sourcing capabilities, innovation, and all of that. But when we kind of go deeper to understand what have you done on Google search, what have you done on CRM, what have you done on building talent pipeline, because talent pipeline and candidate pipeline is a common phrase in every single recruiter's profile today. What we've actually done in that space, if you have not done it, should better not to highlight it, right?
Mhm.
So when you highlight it, you got to have been there, done that kind of a situation. So I had instances like this where kind of had some all the key buzzwords in the profile and in the conversation, but when we go into a little bit more deeper, um, probably the knowledge level is quite shallow.
Okay. Because your thoughts on this, like uh, great
Just to
incidents,
continue,
like narrated. Yeah.
yeah, just a continuation with Sandeep, what Sandeep mentioned. I think I have a good example where I
Uh,
posted one job requirement on LinkedIn, and I got a very good CV. And after means as what you say means my team just did a control F, and they found that yes, the CVs would be good. I was also reviewing that CV, and what I found, it was a copy paste of the full job job description into the CV, that each and every line was matching. And I was like surprised that how come they are not looking at anything, and they are just copy pasting. And at the same time, when I was reading the another paragraph, what I found was the real and actual the job of what that person was doing. But then the best part was it that I did not rejected that candidate based on his resume. I called him and I started screening that profile. And what I was hearing is from the other end that he was a good communicator, and that made me that yes, his communication is something which can give me a first impression. And but then at the same time, when I was going into more details, I found that yes, this person was just making me a fool. And that's how
Okay.
this communication part comes into this, that usually what we have seen that there's a first impression which comes to our mind. Means after looking at his resume, I found that he would be a perfect, but then when I go deep diver in that resume, I found that no, this person is not a fit, he's just making me a fool.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
started doing an interview, but then yeah, and that's how we ended
Okay.
up. But to avoid
Okay.
these things, I think it's better to have that structured interviews. Means we should have
Uh,
prepare those metrics and that behavioral and situational questions at the time, so that we do not get fooled by these kind of judgment which people have usually.
okay.
Just if
So,
I may add on to that, the contrary also holds true,
mm,
Sarabjit, right? So, for example, you may not be a great communicator, but you might have a lot of knowledge behind yourself. And as a recruiters, it's important to identify those
mhm.
possibility of candidates as compared to getting carried away with the communication skills alone.
I think many of the core tech roles or developer roles, they will be fitting your that bracket which you just told of, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So, Vikas, let's continuing with you. So, I have the next question, and then I'll go to Sandeep. So, Vikas, data can tell us everything. As of now, we have like there is data for this, there is graphs for this, and everything is there. But like with so much data with us, like on our fingertips during the hiring process, how do we prevent that, like information overload, what we say, or like the analysis paralysis is a very common term. So, is there a point where too much data can become a hindrance rather than helping you?
Yes, the nice word, analysis paralysis. Doing a lots of analysis and can
Uh,
make the data paralysis. So yes, in the rise of data driven hiring process, I think it's been the datas have given us more insights than ever. So what
uh,
we have been doing with data, I think it's indeed a double-edged sword. So whatever we are
mm,
looking at the data, that it might be a right, it can be a wrong. Means it can give you a different direction as well. So, can a too much data become a showstopper? It can be sometimes. Means when we focus on over complication of decisions. Means when there is a lots of data which is with us. I think the complication is something which also bring on the table. So it
mm,
also gives us the wrong metrics which we have been looking at, and the human institutions which is there when we look out for the data. I think it's been lost. So
okay.
lots of data sometimes it is good to have, but then I think it is also that we should have our own gut feelings or intuitions about that what we have to look out for is we are doing right or not. So for that way, I
Mm,
think there are key matrices which we can focus on. We should define our early key metrics that this is something which is useful for the to prevent the data which we are getting are right or not. We should also do a data simplification while going for an interview, that the data which we are getting from the candidates is something is correct or not. We have to give it into the table. We can also use the AI tools which are right now present in the market to simplify our data, so that the data journey with the candidates which we are taking, I think it's refined.
okay. Understood. Uh, Sandeep, over to you. Your thoughts on this? We have a lot of data. We have like huge amount of data at our fingertips right now. So, and advent of Chat GPT, we have a lot of things which you can put up the data and it will give you some kind of analysis. But do you think like sometimes a lot of like too much information overload can become a hindrance, or rather than being a help, any examples or instances which you want to give to our fellow audience here?
Well, I think Data is definitely a critical part of our business in talent acquisition, because without metrics, we kind of tend to not have a complete visualization of where we are and where we want to be. And data can be different form, shape, and size. So we're talking about recruiting data internally within the organization. We're talking about talent market data, and the source for this information or data are ample. Which source to go after, right? So if I have to, for example, today stack rank the colleges that we have in India based on the ranking system, I have multiple channels giving different data to me. So
Mm.
as you rightly mentioned, the more the data, that's a bigger problem to solve. It's important to kind of narrow down to those areas, like Vikas mentioned, human intuition is important to know which source of information would make more tangible sense for us to look into, as compared to looking at 10 different sources for the same data and then trying to figure out what to do with it, right? So as I mentioned, I was recently looking at stack ranking of our engineering schools in India, and I could find at least five with my simple Google search. The top five search results, of course, they are renowned labels, but every label has their own way of stack ranking the schools. So which one do you go with? Again, that's where your human intuition comes into play, based on your experience of interacting with those schools, those students, or the students who graduated or alums who graduated from those schools. Come in handy to say, okay, these are like the top five schools that I feel could potentially make more sense, or top 10 schools that could potentially make sense. So again, I think it's a very thin line between data and over dosage of data. So it's important to really draw that line and say, this is exactly what would make more sense for us, as compared to taking everything with little to no validation.
Okay. So, Sandeep, I have a very controversial next question for you, for both of you, and start with Sandeep on this. Cultural fit or misfit? So, are we hiring clones? Like, are companies too focused on hiring people who fit their existing culture? And how can we ensure that we are hiring for culture add rather than culture fit to drive innovation?
Well, um, well, that's a good question. So if you look at the trend, I think the philosophy or the concept of looking the culture fit who blends into the current culture of the organization, that is diminishing. Many, and I know quite a few organizations today who are looking at disruptors. I'm looking at organizations who want to have change management. I've seen many organizations who want to drive that. And with that, what happens is the hiring focus has really shifted from, like I mentioned, hiring identical clones who fit or blend into the company's culture, to hiring contrasts of, bringing in somebody into a startup from an enterprise level organization, or vice versa, to do that cultural shift. What happens, like, for example, if you're bringing in somebody from a startup into an enterprise organization, which has very set process, protocols. Now, somebody who comes from a startup will be a hustler. He will be restless, or she will be restless. So they are trying to, they would go in and say, why are we doing this? And more often than not, the response would be, we've been doing it like this forever, right? Because they don't even know why they're doing it, right? And that's where that shakeup really helps the organization to start thinking differently and doing things differently. And that is, in a larger spectrum of things, going to work for the organization's benefit, right? So at least in my experience, I've seen organizations, the organization that I have been part of, the organization that I have not been part of, which I have seen or observed, really want to have that, at least in today's age and time, really want to have those disruptors, people who bring in that perspective which is different from what the DNA of the organization is, in order to scale the organization to the next level and focus on overall growth. Not just within the process. It could be people, it could be process, it could be the system, it could be the business model, it could be innovation. I mean, basically all of this initiatives drives innovation and a culture of thinking and innovating. I believe that the industry is shifting towards looking at cultural misfit more than cultural fit to blend into the current culture.
So, any live example from your company or previous companies you worked on? Like, you have worked with very large organization, and you have worked with very companies which are a little startup first, then they have grown to bigger. So any kind of difference or any kind of things like suppose in your company or in your previous company you've hired a bunch of guys who are from the startup world and they're like breaking things here and there and doing stuff which nobody has done before.
Yeah, maybe I could quote this example when I was working with an airlines company, which is airlines. We know it's all like a streamlined, process-driven organization. They have the protocols and so on and so forth. And we were like, I was hiring engineering leader for that organization, and typically when you do so, you try to look for people coming in from travel domain or those coming from, again, different airlines or competing airlines. But when we were actually going in for that search, well, I kind of started looking at candidates or people coming in from early stage startups, people who have been part of the journey from 0 to 100 to 1,000 and a million or more users. So that growth journey would definitely bring in that capability of an individual to grow faster, right? So that search for me was unique because bringing an top tech product company talent into an airlines, it has a double-edged sword, because you got to convince the candidate to come from a hardcore tech company to choose to join in an airlines, which is ideally considered to be conventional. But they want to kind of disrupt it, right? They wanted to disrupt it, at least from the product that they were building in the region. So when you want to disrupt things, I think this kind of cross-functional hiring really helps. And I've seen that work in my airline stint in the recent past, where we brought an engineering leader from a startup who has seen that overall scale-up journey into a large airlines, which has got over 25,000 employees, and revolutionized the way we do things, right from looking at what cloud infrastructure are we using? Is it the right cloud infrastructure for us? Do we have the right systems in place? Or why do we have so many parallel systems running in place? And if somebody's asking these questions, you're going in the right direction for the larger benefit of the organization.
Okay. Vikas, over to you. Like, I will repeat the question again. So, cultural fit or misfit, are we hiring clones? So, are companies to focus on hiring people who fit their existing culture, and how we ensure that we are adding like a cultural add, which adds to a culture rather than a cultural fit to drive what you say the motivation or groundbreaking stuff which companies are able to do.
Yeah, I'll start with an example which I have recently faced because we were hiring for one of the director level position where we were not looking out for a talent who is coming out from a similar industry. What we were looking is that we were looking for someone who is coming out with a fresh mindset, who can run up the own department which we are looking at. So that makes it that now companies which were previously focusing on hiring the people who can fit to their existing culture. By that way, they were creating a homogeneous workforce. Now they're moving to a shift to that they should add something different to their culture, so that there should be a diversity in their experiences. There should be a diversity, and they can have an inclusive workforce, which can bring up some lot of new ideas to the team, and which can also bring up some new innovations. Because when we tend to have that existing similar kind of the experiences which we are looking out from the same industry, I think that is not really helping out to the organization. Because nowadays, every organization is looking out for a different mixed skill sets, which if we are looking out for the similar organization, we may not be able to find it. So that's why what they are focusing on, they're focusing more on a different organization culture, different skill set, which they can inbuilt in their current organization, so that they can have that diverse workforce within them. And that was a very great example. Means I have recently done that part as well. So we did not means our focus always been as a telco. So we focus on that if we are looking out for someone coming out from a same telco background or an SI background. What we tried and tested is that we were looking out for something which is more in a different experience altogether. We brought up a different someone who was coming out from a from an organization which was kind of a startup organization, but he has led the good workforce in the past, and he was currently also leading a good workforce. So we brought up that person into a system so that we can have a different mindset, a different flavor, and as well as how we can be into this fast-paced environment, how we can deal with that kind of a situation with when it says that we are kind of a company which has a very good strength, but then we have to also focus on our innovations. So I think yes, cultural ed is something which is a word which is booming right now, and I think most of the organization, when they focus on diversity and inclusivity, I think their D&I, which is a name, I think they focus on that kind of a shift.
Okay, great. With that, we come to the end of the main questions. So we have a lot of audience questions, so very interesting questions that came in, and I will ask them one by one. Anybody or both of you can take the questions. So let's start off the audience questions. So the first questions came: why traditional interviews are like blind dates? Interviews often feel awkward and scripted like blind dates. How can we make the interview experience more authentic and reflective of real world situations? Anybody want to?
I can take a stab at it first, because if you're okay. I think that's again a very interesting question. I think if we look at the way we have evolved in the way we look at interviewing process, it's become more of conversation these days, where as we are evaluating candidates are on the other side trying to evaluate us and the organization as well. And hence, we always say TA represents the brand, and TA is always the front face of the organization. So I believe today, with the social network that we have, it's easy to validate and get to know the person or the candidate a little bit more, even before we meet them. I wouldn't call it a blind date anymore, because we have ample avenues to find out a little bit more about the candidate outside of the resume. It's pretty easy. Go into LinkedIn, look at their achievements, accomplishments, or the job or the post that they have done, or something they have been proud about, or certifications that they have gained, which may not be in their resume, right? So you kind of try and gather a little bit more about the individual. So what happens during that, by doing that, is when you're actually meeting that candidate for an interview, even the candidate feels that you are prepared for that conversation and you're genuinely interested in knowing a little bit more about the candidate. So that drives the conversation, and that conversation should be more like, not that I'll ask you questions and you answer that question. It should be more like, let's solve for this and see how we could find out what you could add value to the organization, and vice versa. The candidate is also evaluating where I could add value to this organization and what's in it for me, right? Okay. What's in it me is the biggest question the candidate will have during that conversation. Every round of discussion they're having, trust me, at the back of their mind, they're constantly thinking, looking at the person that they're talking to, what's in it for me? Of course, compensation is a key part of it, but they're also trying to figure out the role. Am I being in the right team? Am I going to work with the right set of people? Am I in the organization with the right culture? Things like those. So I believe it's a two-way conversation today. And it's equally weighed. The candidate could choose to. I've seen instances where candidates says after 2 rounds of discussions, this is not the role I was looking for. Probably this is not the kind of opportunity I was looking for, and they step out from the process, despite them performing really well in the process, right? So it's a two-way state. I wouldn't say it's a blind date anymore. It's more about getting more prepared.
Okay. So the next question came to me, the AI paradox. About the AI paradox, can machines really spot emotional intelligence? Like we have seen that AI is increasingly used in hiring, and it can detect like emotional intelligence and leadership potential. So how we can balance, say, AI-driven assessments which we send to the candidates and job seekers with human judgment? So anybody can answer. Like, open hands.
I can answer. I think regarding to the AI, I think it's becoming an important tool in the hiring process these days. Most of us, I think, look out for the way where we can short out our approach in the previous traditional methods which we were doing, like means sending the long emails to the candidate with the job descriptions, sending the interview invites to the candidates, calling the candidates. I think AI has reduced our task on this. So with its ability to quickly analyze a vast amount of data, and I think the patterns which AI has, uh, I think human cannot do that part most of the times. But then at the same time, it has also some part of that has been missing in it. But then yes, AI has to be there. It is very useful, which is making our life a bit easy in terms of when it comes to a data. But when it comes to a human interaction, because as a recruiter, what we have is, I think, our strength is more of a human intelligence. We have that kind of a intelligence within us, which we use and to identify that yes, this candidate would be having that experience or not. There are many areas, means in the situational interviews, in the behavioral interviews, I think there AI cannot judge the person. It's we as a human who can judge that person on based on that situation, how they will be acting it, or how on that behavior, how the behavior would be looking at. So skills based on behavior and situation, I think AI cannot help you out in that. But then AI can ease your job in most of the automation kind of a task.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Moving on to the next one, next question, which is very, very interesting questions we are getting right now. So, hiring for the role you don't have yet. Okay, is it a risk or is a master stroke? Like hiring talent for roles that maybe doesn't exist right now, but might exist in the future, like in your company. Is it too risky, and how do you foresee the future of work and hiring for tomorrow's challenges? This is a question which came from the audience. Over to you guys. Anyone put it?
Maybe I
I
can
can
take
give
a.
a bit answer. Yeah, Sandeep,
Go
yeah,
ahead,
over
Vikas.
to you. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yep. No issues.
Go next. Go
Okay,
ahead.
Anyone can start.
I think
Yeah.
uh, it can be risky and it can be a master stroke in both the ways. I think hiring for a role that you don't have yet. I think sometimes what we see as a team is that we are invest. It can be an investment into the different skills which we are looking at into a team. It can have our a long term planning, means it can be a long part of a long term planning that we should focus on. It also create a cross functional development programs. So if we are focusing on different areas of uh, uh, focusing on the future plans, that yes, this is something which we have to look into our team, and by that way we may create a future for us. I think it's a master stroke. But sometimes it is risky because maybe we turn up out with a wrong decision. The decision which we are making, I think, maybe a wrong decision, that whatever we are thinking might be coming in future is not coming in future. So, and by that way we can also met to a financial loss. So we are hiring a talent with such
Maybe
amount,
more on the
and
riskier side than the master stroke. Like, more risky than master stroke.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sandeep,
Yeah. Just my 2 cents. Generally, we don't. I mean, as a TA, we are not allowed to hire for positions which are not budgeted and approved. So technically, it boils down to the business risk that business is willing to take. What we could do from TA is being prepared based on the direction the business is moving into. Say, for example, if tomorrow if we are already, any organization for that matter, is looking at adapting a new technology, say in on mobile OS, they're currently using Android and iOS, but there's conversations around using Flutter as a technology stack. What TA could do in this case, proactively start building a talent pipeline, for Flutter, getting to know the market a little bit more. As compared to hiring, you're driving the market intel and gathering the information on where your talent resides and what would be your potential target, and go to companies and go to locations to set up those teams. I think that would be more of a master stroke, because the moment the gear shift happens in this situation, moving from Android and mobile OS developers to Flutter developers, you are well prepared and you have little ramp up time to hire for those roles. So which means it will really help you fill them faster and more efficiently, and help and enable the business to also deliver product on time. So I think business first is the mindset that should be here, and engaging in those conversations, being proactively prepared is what would work, I believe.
Okay. Okay. The next question is from a very experienced talent acquisition professional. So, is the gut feeling in hiring a real, like, is a gut feeling, which you said it's a gut feeling in hiring a real tool, or is just a TA mythology? How much weight should we put to gut feelings in hiring decisions? Is there a balance between data-driven hiring and intuition? Anybody can take that. Over to you.
Well, I would say it's a combination of both. Well, if the gut feeling is driven with experience and exposure, and there's a rationale behind why you feel so, it would definitely make sense, right? And that comes with experience and exposure. If your gut feeling is the foundation of your gut feeling is not so strong, I think it's not so good. But as recruiters, as we engage and interact with so many candidates, more often or not, we know what's going to work and what's not. I still give a bit of a weightage to the experience and the value add the recruiters carry on the table, because they have seen more and they have learned through experiences. And there's a reason why the gut feeling is as such in any situation. So I would still give a bit of a weightage for the gut feeling of a seasoned recruiter as compared to somebody who has been into the business in recruiting for a few years and has not seen the depth of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think for me as well, I think gut feeling works very well. I think the concept of the gut feeling in the hiring decisions often sparks with debate, while in viewing the essential tool for identifying the right talent. And I have seen that because I have been means most of my roles when I try to approaching any candidate, there is a gut feeling in back of my mind that will this person will be able to join our role or not. And the stint, I think it sometimes says that yes, I'm spending 2 interviews with this person, but and at the same time I understand that he might not join. And we have seen in the cases of the candidate who have a long notice period, I think in that cases also the gut feeling works very well. So while there is a data behind it to it as well, that people who have long notice periods, they usually tend to back out. But then I think there is a gut feeling with a long period notice candidate as well that he will join. And sometimes it works very well when I have seen any candidate that he would pass to that phase or not. I think it works.
Okay. Next question is very pertinent question from many of the recruiters which I have interacted. Why tell me about yourself needs to be retired? So the tell me about yourself question has been there for a staple for like years and years to go. But does it actually reveal anything valuable? What would be a more insightful opening question to ask candidates?
Well, I think it's quite obsolete now. It kind of really in today's age and time reflects the lack of preparedness or readiness of the interviewer, because most of the information that you have seen on your profile, you should be able to kind of go through it even before you go into the discussion. And it's quite obsolete. I would kind of feel it should definitely sunset that question. And I think a great opening question would be showing the candidate that you have gone through the profile. Hey, I went through your profile. I see you have done some great work. I see you studied in this school, then you started your career. Tell me a little bit more about your career journey, on why you chose these organizations and how did you move up in your career ladder, right? Maybe if the person has worked in one organization, tell me a little bit more about how your career journey has been within this organization. what were your learnings? I'm curious to know about your learnings and some of the challenging situations that you went through. I think that's a great opening question, which shows the preparedness of the interviewer. And at the same time, you don't want the candidate to again read out the resume for you by telling where I studied and where I graduated and where I
Yeah,
worked.
exactly. Uh, Vikas, your thoughts on this? Anything?
Yes, I think we have changed a lot of traditional part in it, and I think these comes at with a traditional approach the previously which we were following up, that asking about yourself and means asking the candidate to read your resume, that to give us a summary about your education background. I think that's something which a recruiter has already read through. So what is different is that they should also make understand that has that person gone through their company profile, what is the passion, why he would be looking out for a change, what he feels is and what is the job which we are sharing to him is resonate to his passion, will it resonate to his future goal, is something which we have to look at. We can also make a question like that: what a recent challenge you have faced in your current role. How did you overcome to that challenge? Is something which we can ask. We can also make him understand that we can also ask him what excites him towards our company. Why you want to join our team? What do you feel that what is you have seen in the responsibility and how you can match that towards your current role? So there are
Okay.
few questions which we can tweak a bit to get an understanding of that person, and in that sense also we can also get an understanding that if that person is really the person which we are looking at or not.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So the last section which we have for questions is there. This section where we get a lot of questions from the job seekers because we are a marketplace. We get a lot of questions from job seekers. So I have got one question which is repeated quite many times in our forums. How can job seekers from small cities and institutions effectively prepare to compete with candidates from metros or larger cities, more prestigious uh, education background or pedigrees when applying for jobs? So both of you can answer like one by one. We can go, and these are questions from many job seekers which we have.
Yeah, I think I'll answer this because I'm coming from a very small town, and that's what I introduced myself. That I'm been coming out
Yeah.
from a small town, Alwar, and I was competing it with the Delhi Heights. I think at the when I was looking out for a job in Metro City. So what they can do is they can look out for various training programs which are right now means I think
Okay.
it's very easily available online. So to upskill themselves to compete with the metro city people, I think they can in the time of their education itself, they can learn for new technologies. They can gain an extra knowledge of what they have been doing apart from their curriculum. They can go for because they bring a diversity. I think from coming out from a small towns or coming out from a small cities, they have a lot of diversity within them, because that's what they do. They are involved into multiple things, but then the kind of an exposure and the experience is something which lack, because what we have seen in the cities, in the bigger cities, they get exposure to present themselves at the early stages of their education. But in the small towns, I think it's more of a studious kind of a thing. They only read their bookish thing. They only go for their reading their book materials. But then I think they can diversify whatever they have been reading, whatever they are studying. I think by that way they can master in their skills.
Okay.
Yeah, I go with Vikas on this one. It's important to have that continuous learning mindset, and identifying your core competency or core strength, I would say, and working with the core strength as your clear USP when you have those conversations with organizations to crack the interviews. It's okay to speak about things you feel positive about. It's okay to feel speak about things that you feel really strong about, that you have
Okay.
developed some level of expertise in that aspect which could add value to the organization. More often than not, candidates shy off or during the interviews, talking through about the new technology that they have learned recently, new programming language they have learned recently, or maybe a new way of coding or that they have learned recently. There's no one size fits all in this case. I think one should definitely invest in themselves in continuous learning and upskilling. Totally agree with what Vikas is mentioning.
Great. So lovely, lovely answer. I think a lot of job seekers will find very useful. So now we come to the end of the discussion, and the end. Before we end, we have a very interesting round, very funny round, which is known as rapid fire. So I have prepared a bunch of questions for both Vikas and Sandeep. So whoever wants to come first, I will start asking a bunch of rapid fire questions to you, and you have to answer whatever comes to your mind first. So who will be the first one?
Yeah,
I
I
can
can
take
go
it.
first. Okay, there you go. You get to choose, Sarabjit.
Okay, like we can go with say Vikas first, and then Sandeep can take it up. Okay, so Vikas, questions for you coming up. So, what's one thing you do during interviews that no one else knows about? So now they will know about, but what what is that thing which you do during interviews?
Mm, what I do is something different. Is I read the full resume of that person first.
Okay, great. If you have to make a hiring decision based on uh, one emoji a candidate sends, which emoji would get the job?
To me, it is a smiley.
Ah, great. What's more important, hiring for the job or hiring for the future potential?
Hiring for the future potential.
Okay. We have a very funny question coming up next. If your career had a theme song, what would it be?
ये कहाँ आ गए हम?
Okay. What's the strangest place you have ever conducted an interview? Strangest place to conduct an interview.
Uh, Usually, I have taken the interviews from my desk only. But then I think nothing is a strange place. I think I have done all the interviews from my
All
professional
of
part.
them are from the desk. Okay. Okay. If you had to pick one superpower to use in talent acquisition, what would it be?
Uh, Superpower. There should be a name of that character or what?
No, one superpower, not a character, power.
Okay, then I just make up the blow of that stick and get a candidate.
Okay, too easy. What's your guilty pleasure that gets you through a tough work day? Chocolates, coffee, or motivational memes?
Motivation.
Great. Thank you, Vikas, for being a sport. I'll move on to Sandeep. So, Sandeep, I have a bunch of questions ready for you. So, can we start?
Sure.
If you could steal one trait from a famous business leader, what would it be and from whom?
One trait, is it?
Yeah.
I think being people first. I learned that from the founder of AirAsia, so Tony Fernandez.
Okay. What's your most unusual pre-interview ritual?
I go into LinkedIn, check out the profile, and before any interview, although I have a resume, I have a habit of going into the LinkedIn profiles.
Okay. If you could ask only one question in every interview for the rest of your career, what it would it be? Like, what would it be?
Well, so got to think about it a bit. I would say, why choose us?
Okay. Would you rather hire a genius with an attitude or a hardworking underdog?
I'll go with the later one.
Underdog. Okay. If you could recruit anyone from history to lead your team, who would it be and why? Anyone from history to lead your team.
Hmm. Could it be anybody? And like, is it like a celebrity or?
Not anybody from history. Anybody who.
Okay. I follow Steve Jobs a lot. I would say he has a great product vision and can-do mindset. Somebody like him.
Okay. What's one thing on your desk that always makes you smile during a long work day?
My notepad.
Okay. If you were to write a memoir about your career, what would be the title of that?
What a journey.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for being a sport. Lovely interacting with both of you guys, and that we come to an end of the Insta Roundtable. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope my questions were well framed, and I had a great experience with you guys. Like very excited to see how the post production work comes out. But thank you guys. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Vikas, for taking time off your busy schedule and coming and joining me in this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarabjit.
Thank you, Sarabjit. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Take care, guys. Bye.